Disclaimer: this podcast is not in any way affiliated with Universal, DreamWorks, or Big Idea Entertainment. All opinions discussed belong to the person sharing their views and may not reflect on our personal beliefs. We also ask to respect the privacy of both the interviewees and the interviewers. Thank you and enjoy the show.
'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there.
This episode is going to be a different one. Not only was Lennie Jarratt a technical genius, he was also Santa, spreading Christmas joy to sick children around the world, and most importantly, a family man. We interviewed Lennie in 2023, and in early 2025, he approved the final cut of this episode. Not long after, Lennie was diagnosed with esophageal cancer, and unfortunately, he passed on September 22, 2025. This video is in memory of him. No one can tell his story better than himself. So without further ado, here's the story of Lennie Jarratt.
Mr. Lennie Jarratt, I'd like to thank you so much for joining me on this podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me on. This will be fun.
Who are you?
Well, I am kind of a database programmer, business analyst, kind of a jack of all trades kind of thing at this point in my career.
What can you tell us about your childhood and your earliest memories?
Well, I grew up in a small town, really was not a town, in Southern Virginia. The town itself had one stop sign and a store and about 4 houses. I lived actually about 2.5 miles from there, and my closest neighbor was actually my grandparents, who were a quarter mile away across the road on a farm. So I grew up kind of helping on the farm and doing stuff. And one of the fun memories I do have is me and my grandfather would go fishing at the pond a lot during the summer. We'd go hang out at the pond and go fishing every day. So that was always really a lot of fun. But growing up on a farm gives you a totally different perspective than a lot of people grow up. For a long time, when I was growing up there at Stony Creek, there in Sussex, was the only stoplight on the interstate system for a long time. And so many accidents there until they finally fixed that.
So besides fishing, what other interests did you have, and what was the stuff that you thought that you would grow up as a kid?
Well, I kind of thought I would grow up to do working outdoors and stuff. My father worked for the Department of Forestry, so I was always doing stuff with him as I got older. He also did some side work as an electrician, so I was the kind of the kid that went to help him when I got old enough, and I'd be the one crawling around in the crawl spaces under house, running wires and doing stuff like that. Because I was little, it made it easy to crawl around into the houses and do stuff all the time. So I helped him a lot. So I kind of grew up helping my dad all the time, helping my grandfather all the time on the farm, helping them feed the animals, all that kind of stuff. So I thought I'd grow up doing something outdoors. And I think when I got to be more of a teenager, I realized, yeah, this is really not the life I want to do. So honestly, the first time I saw a computer was after my junior year in high school. I went to our local junior college for a summer computer program and just fell in love with computers. So I ended up skipping my senior year in high school and going to college that year, started learning computers and just doing everything with computers, and just fell in love with them at that point. That started off my career in computers.
How would you say was your school life like, from all the way from elementary to like high school?
It was actually not too bad. I went to private school for the first 6 years, or actually 5 years. Then I switched to public school. And when I did that, honestly, my first 2 years back in our local public school, I did absolutely nothing. I basically was so far ahead of the other kids in the school district, because I lived in the county, would not let me test out and skip a grade. So by the time I got back to junior high, I started doing pretty good back again. By high school, I was pretty much right at the top of my class. There was like 4 of us that battled to see who was going to be valedictorian or who wasn't. I was still actually number 2 in my class until my senior year. When I went to college, that actually hurt my grades because they didn't give us any points for taking college classes. So I ended up dropping down to number 7 in my school. But I guess my 10th grade teacher was one of the guys I really liked, because he recognized that I could do work. So he pushed me. He told me, he's like, I'm going to give you the hardest work of any of the students here because I know you can do it. And I did. I'm so glad he pushed me to that level and got me going. And I really just kind of fell in love more with math at that point. I did play some sports. I played baseball in high school. I actually did marching band in high school. When I actually got out of school, I stayed connected with my high school I came back and did all of their football statistics for them every year for probably about 5 years. Even though as I went through college, I was helping out the football team with the statistical analysis and stuff like that. So basically my associate's degree was in math, went off to 4-year college and ended up kind of getting burned out and dropping out because at the same time, my mother actually passed away from a massive cerebral hemorrhage. And I just kind of didn't want to do school as much anymore. So I kind of dropped out of school for a while, went to work, doing a lot of different stuff, selling burial insurance, um, working at a radio station, selling advertising, just a huge mix of stuff. And finally, probably it was about 7 years later, I decided I wanted to get back to school. So I actually went to work for the state penitentiary in our area as a prison guard and went through a riot at the prison. And I'm like, yeah, this is not for me. I am not going to stay here. So I got a job over at our county jail, still guarding prisoners, and started to write their programs for inmate tracking. But I would work on night shift all the time. And then I went to school. So I got off at 7 o'clock in the morning. I go to school. So I went to school, finished up my degree in a couple of years, and then went straight into a programming career. And I think I like to do stuff that I like to learn with. So I did capturing data from medical instruments, then moved to like a logistical company building load systems for just-in-time deliveries to help reduce warehouse costs. Did that a couple, then did some other contract with stuff work with a mortgage company and another group that basically we did a banking application, some email application, actually did a fantasy football website that actually was one of the top 5 fantasy sports websites back in, it was 1999 at that point, by PC Magazine. So then I went to work for Big Idea after that. So that kind of gives you the history of where I came from.
Going back in time a little bit, when you were a child, what was some of your favorite TV shows, movies, books, or just general media stuff?
I really, for music stuff, I was very eclectic. I listened to country music, classical music, hard rock music, pop music, bluegrass, gospel, Southern gospel. I guess actually one of my favorite groups was the Statler Brothers out of Stanton, Virginia. And I think I liked them the most because when I was in elementary school, one of the schools I went to was a church school. And we always did plays and stuff like that. And one of the teachers there told me that I would never be able to sing. So I started listening to Statler Brother tapes and actually taught myself to sing all 4 harmonies. So I could go anywhere from bass all the way up to the tenor. I can only do bass now, but I just kind of got just singing like crazy. And it's kind of funny stuff now. I'm typically kind of loud. And it was just one Sunday in church. It was hilarious. We were in a church in an auditorium. And one of the kids up singing there doing the lead worship, we sang "It Is Well With My Soul." And I did the refrain from the bass part. And I could see her start laughing on stage. She could actually hear me over top of all the mics and the speakers and everything. And I was just standing in the back singing. So lots of fun growing up. I mean, lots of different things.
Were there any TV shows or any movies that caught your attention?
TV shows, I like Andy Griffith, The Great American Hero. MASH was probably one of my favorites growing up at that time. I'm not sure of others, but those were kind of the ones I think I watched most of the time. And then every Saturday night, you had to sit down with your parents and watch Hee Haw and then watch Lawrence Welk. So always interesting. But yeah, back then you only had 3 TV channels. So you were very limited as to what you could watch. Movies, I did like watching a lot of science fiction movies and stuff as well. I got into science fiction movies. And even as a teenager year, and stuff like that. Me and a friend of mine, once I started driving, we would go do that. Plus, I still played sports. I still played softball during the summer in church leagues and stuff like that. Just do little pickup games with friends, playing basketball and stuff like that. I think my biggest thing I did was I was never going to be the superstar, but I could play anything. So I was kind of the all around. I could do whatever you needed me to do, but I was never going to be the superstar anywhere.
When you brought up computers, try to give us like a little bit of a refresher. So about what year was it when you discovered computers and what was the computers like back then compared to nowadays?
Well, it was after my junior year in high school, so it was 1981. My first computer I got to work on at that summer camp, was a TRS 80, otherwise known as the Trash 80s. And then that senior year, so the fall of 1981, I went to college and actually got a job part-time working in their computer lab. And their systems, was hooked to a mainframe out of William and Mary College because they were an affiliate of them. But the individual PCs actually ran on tapes. So you had to put the tapes in to load the programs. And the one thing about the TRS 80s, it was an external tape drive. So every morning when we came in and opened up the lab and stuff, we had to actually take a screwdriver and tune the disk drive to the correct speed so that they would work. And we had to do that every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. So that's kind of what they were like back then. I missed the punch card era. After that, I think my first computer I ever bought was a K-Pro, which had a 300 baud modem, which was really speedy at the time because I could just do dial-up. So that actually helped me get through some schooling and taking some computer classes and stuff without having to go to the computer lab. Because before I had my own computer, everything meant walking to the computer lab to do your work. Once I had a 300 baud modem, I didn't have to do that anymore. It was fun. So this was pre-Windows. You were still in an operating system. It was actually called CP/M at the time. So it was pre-DOS as well. So kind of date myself a long way back.
When I interviewed Justin Barrett, he mentioned how he got himself a Commodore 64. Did you ever have a run-in with a Commodore 64?
I know of them. I never actually bought one because they were more the gaming computers and I wanted something I could do programming on. So I never was a computer gamer. That is one thing I never got into, was the computer gaming side.
And speaking of games, because you mentioned 1981, which, arcades and home video games, were you ever interested in that when you were younger?
Oh, yeah, I'd play that, especially when I got to college. I'd go play video games. I'd play Ms. Pac-Man, Galaga. I think my favorite game was probably Asteroid because we actually had a version of the Asteroid game on the TRS 80s. So when nobody was in the computer lab, I could sit there and play Asteroid. Actually, the first program I built in computers for that summer camp was actually a Hangman game. So
Talking about your college, Virginia State University, what can you tell
Yep.
us about Virginia State University?
It is actually one of the historically Black colleges and universities. It was local to me, so it was easy to go to work and then drive to the college and do it. They didn't have, I guess, like tons and tons of options. And I don't even know. I know they've had a few famous people go through it since I was there. It was an interesting college to go to, and I met some great people there working with them. Actually, our secretary in the math department, at one time, she held the world record for the fastest typing on a computer. I think it was 192 words a minute or something like that.
Just to know that in my heart, you will always be an MVP in that university. So you are a celebrity in my books. It says you have a BS in mathematics. So how hard or how easy was it for you to get that?
Actually, it was easier when I was going in. I knew I wanted to do computer programming, but everybody I talked to was like, get a degree in math or physics or something else, and then do programming. People weren't hiring programmers per se right at that time. They wanted somebody with multiple skill sets. So I basically did a math degree because I loved math at that point, and I already had a whole bunch of classes in math. I'd already gone through calculus and stuff like that. So basically I didn't have to take but like 4 or 5 more classes to finish up my math degree, and with the concentration in computer science there. But I think actually by the time I got to my senior year and started taking abstract math, actually that was actually a course. It's where you prove the theorems that work in the rest of math. That was actually the most fun math class I have ever had. I was actually surprised at how easy it was. I think it was easy because it was just fun for me. And one of the fun things that came out of actually being at Virginia State was Caltech was doing applications for an internship during the summer after I was graduating, and I was selected as one of the students to come out there. So I actually, because I went to Virginia State, I got to go to Caltech for 2 months and work on one of their supercomputers, which was a 64 node distributed computer at the time. It was the fastest computer in the world at that time that wasn't in the hands of the military. And I had got to work on a basically Gauss's unit space lattice point problem, which was an unsolved math problem at the time. I didn't solve it. The computers really weren't ready yet to solve it. I think it actually could be solved now if somebody wanted to. But actually I was able to cut down the upper bound by half. So this might be getting a little more technical, but the upper bound was 0.62 when I, so 0.6, yeah, a little over 0.62 when I started. After that 2 months, I was able to cut the upper bound max down to, so we knew it was about between 5.6 and 5.7.
Just so you know that for the rest of this interview, you could be as technical as you want, even if you're completely going over my head.
Okay.
This is a different perspective that I haven't heard about from somebody who worked at the company. So, I just love hearing all the different stories and stuff like that, no matter how complicated they may get.
Yeah, I'm not on the graphic or the artist side. So I'm definitely on the techie side.
Obviously, that is super important, especially with exactly what you did, which we'll be getting into. But yeah, so let's talk about, your early days, corrections officers, besides stopping a riot, what other crazy stuff happened while you were a corrections officer?
Working in a prison is kind of insane. I mean, you always got to keep your head on a swivel. You've got inmates that if they don't like you will throw stuff at you, including bodily fluids, which I was hit with multiple times. I think the hardest thing anybody ever hit me with, somebody threw a can of shaving cream and hit me right in the middle of the back. It just hit me perfectly that it didn't really hurt. Really, it was kind of just right place that it landed flat instead of on one of the corners. But I think I was one of the guys there that I like the outdoors anyway. So every time it snowed or anything like that, I volunteered to go walk the fence. So basically 4 hours out of my 8-hour shift, I was walking around the fence, checking on the fence, making sure nothing was going to escape and stuff like that. But I kind of enjoyed being on the outside there a lot more than being on the inside, as you can imagine.
Prison management and team lead. What does that involve?
It was only about 4 months in, I ended up becoming a supervisor. So I would basically manage to run the buildings. So, and then I'd have a couple of other officers in the buildings and stuff as well that I would manage and make sure they were doing what they needed to do. And actually, most of the time, I was bringing in new people that I would help train and stuff like that, what to look for, what to watch for. Honestly, if inmates used as much ingenuity to get away with stuff in prison on the outside, they would have never ended up in prison to start with. But there is one funny story. It was not really funny. It's kind of sad, but kind of funny when you look back on it now. I had a kid I went to high school with that I knew he kept getting in trouble all the time. He ended up being in the county jail because he was basically institutionalized. He couldn't live on the outside. For a few months, he was great. Then he would go steal a car, get caught, make sure he get caught, so he'd come back to jail because he liked having free meals and a place to stay and stuff inside the jail. But I didn't realize it till one day we were sitting having a conversation one day. He actually turned 12 in the holding cell in our county jail. And I didn't even know that until I was working in the prison and he was there again as an inmate. Kind of a sad story, but kind of funny at this stage a little bit.
Were there any other prisoners that left impact like that kid did?
No, I don't think so, actually. I think most of them is just, I remember a few of them and stuff now, but nothing like his story to talk about.
Next was being a deputy sheriff. What was it like?
It was interesting. So basically, I was a deputy sheriff, but I still worked in the jail. So I basically still managed inmates, took care of inmates, did the intake, outtake. And like I said, I was writing a program for them to help track their inmates because Virginia is one of those states that you earn good time. So you had to calculate how much good time they were earning based on if they were doing jobs. The guys working in there got extra time off. So they'd end up reducing their sentence as it went. They let me go to school. They actually helped pay for my schooling to go back to school. But I think one of the things that really was fun there is I got to become an instructor. So I actually taught CPR, first aid, and actually was just starting to teach firearm training and stuff as well while I was there, which gave me a lot more experience being in front of people and talking to people because I kind of grew up really, really shy. Still didn't completely grow out of that. If we get to it later, I was actually so shy when I met my wife. She actually asked me out on our first date because I was too scared to ask her out.
Just letting you know, absolutely no shame in that whatsoever. So
no, it's kind of a fun story. I kind of tell that every once in a while. It's actually kind of interesting. Now, I don't really care. I'll get up and talk to crowds, 700-800 people I've done before doing presentations and stuff. I have no fear getting up and talking in front of anybody at this point.
You also mentioned how you completed your bachelor degree while working this position full time. How crazy was that?
It actually wasn't too bad once you got into a rhythm. So I kind of did, I know a lot of people do it weird, but I kind of reversed my day. So I would basically get up at like 9 o'clock at night, go to work at 11 till 7 o'clock in the morning, get off, go home, change clothes, go to school at 9 o'clock in the morning till about 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, come home, do all the homework I needed, try to get to bed by like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then sleep till 9 o'clock and then do it all over again. You get into a rhythm that way, and it actually worked pretty good. It was only difficult the first few weeks. After that, it was like I just had a different day schedule. That was it.
You also learned Excel. How different was Excel back then to how it is now?
Just didn't have all the extra features. I mean, it just had the basics. You could still do the column functions, adding, summing, doing stuff like that. I really never got into the pivot tables and stuff. A lot of the features that they have in Excel now didn't even exist back then. So it was very limited. It was very more rudimentary system.
You already talked a little bit about your internship at the California Institute of Technology. Is there any other cool tidbits that happened while you were there?
Yes, I experienced my first earthquake. It was a 7.3 earthquake out at Joshua Tree. And it was so interesting. I know we're supposed to leave the building and everything like that, but where Joshua Tree was, where compared to where Caltech was, where we were staying, it wasn't the violent shaking at that point. It was a wave. So you could hear it coming. You could hear this loud noise like a train coming at you. And when I got up out of bed to try to get outside, it literally was like the floor was rolling just like you were in water on a wave. And I never actually got out the door, even though it lasted almost 50 seconds. And then it was fun the rest of the day because I went over that's where the media center is for earthquakes in California. So the media was there all afternoon. So you could actually go over and watch where the media was, watch the press conferences and stuff all day long, which was kind of fun just to kind of sit there and see everything. And then feeling aftershocks. I think there was one aftershock that actually scared me. The rest, it wasn't that big a deal. But between the buildings there at Caltech, there's one bridge that walks, so you stay inside, you're walking across this bridge between buildings, and we had an aftershock that I think, if I remember, was like a 3.5, but that was violently shaking. I mean, you couldn't even move because you were just going back and forth and waiting for it to stop. And the technology that Caltech uses, they're actually, they help design it and stuff. Their library is actually built on rollers. When the ground shakes there for the earthquakes, their library, especially, it's a 9-story library, it actually goes back and forth on rollers to help protect it. And they like to do a lot of technology research on earthquakes and stuff there. And the other buildings, I forgot how they were designed. But yeah, there was never any problem while I was there with that. But that was an experience I think I will never, ever forget.
C, coding and MS Word. What can you tell us about that?
It's just lots of practice. So C is one of the first languages I learned after basic, and it's one of the languages I used for almost everything. It used capturing medical equipment. I used it for almost everything going through, and it's kind of one of my languages that it was long before the object-oriented languages and stuff came out. So you really had to dig in deep and have to how you create things, and it really helped you understand a lot better. You couldn't basically cut corners with it. So it taught me how to program really, really well. So then every other language I picked up was easy after that. It was matter, I knew how to program. The language became secondary. It's just like, easy now. You can learn second languages very easily once you know one language a little bit simpler too, because you know what objects and stuff already are. You know what everything is. It's just a matter of getting the right word for it. So it made every other programming language after that easy. And I don't even know how many programming languages I've actually used now. Probably at least a dozen to 15 or so at this point that I've used throughout my career. But C is one of those that lasted the longest for me. Probably the one I probably know the most now that I've ever had to use would probably be Perl or some shell scripting in Linux systems. Those would probably be the ones I could easily drop back into faster than anything else. I do know a lot of HTML now and a lot of PHP, and one language I actually done a little bit with, but I'm actually going to start learning again is Python, because I can use that for a lot of my data analysis stuff work now, and I haven't really played with that yet. So that's one of my languages that I will start learning here in the next couple of months.
And speaking about medical things, medical technologies, 1992 to 1994.
Yep. Yeah, my first project with that was a project with for Zeiss. They are a vision company. They make glasses and stuff, but they also did. If you've been to an eye doctor, you've probably been on a yeah, probably been the last about 5 to 10 years. They used to use these where you put your when you put your head down on an eye test and you're looking in that to check find spots or read the letters and stuff. When you're on that system, that is probably a system I worked on back then because I basically did the embedded programming for that walk people through what they were doing, how they were doing it, and giving the results back to the doctors and stuff from that. And then we went on to actually building other medical equipment. Back then, the medical equipment was not tied to computers a lot. So I was actually building systems to help capture that data. So the medical groups and facilities could actually look at the data coming off of those test equipment and stuff. The Zeiss one was just one that was embedded on an EEPROM. The rest were try to actually hook it up to actually like a telephone cord, an RJ11 cord, and actually try to grab the data off of it. So very interesting work to deal with that. So a lot of in-depth technology.
Also interesting is the skills that you utilize, such as automatic data collection, C coding, employee management, Perl coding, project management, just to name a few of those skills that you used working there.
Yep. It was a lot. I think the automation was the most fun getting that done because that helped me in the future in future jobs. Actually, especially with when I went to like the logistics company, we would actually have to remotely collect data from these companies every single night to start. We knew what they needed to order. So we basically were collecting their orders overnight to know how to help them build their loads to ship it the most efficiently. Same thing with our sports website. I had to use a lot of data automation there to pull in our data every day and automate that. Also, automating the process of dealing with server outages and stuff like that as well too. So the automation has been great because actually I'm still using automation techniques that I learned back then to this day.
One thing that caught my eye was Unix, because if I remember correctly, and I feel like I'm going to get this wrong, so if you happen to know, feel free to correct me, but Unix, I believe, was used when Phil Vischer was trying to make VeggieTales their very first episode. So what can you say about Unix?
Yes, he did. Actually, we use Unix at Big Idea like crazy. All of our render machines, almost all of our computers were built on Linux operating system. Few people had a Mac, but the Linux operating system actually provided better software and more power than for a lot less money than you could use buying Macs for everybody. They used the software called GIMP to do a lot of the animation stuff and things like that. So it actually now is a free software, but you could customize it a lot better. You could customize it yourself. That was really the reason it really helped save a ton of money when animation is going to be expensive just because of the amount of time and manpower you have to put into it. Though at one point, I know I was collecting data when we were doing the Jonah movie. Our render farm was probably at least 1,000 servers. I had to automate collecting data from so I could do analysis of that data to figure out how long renderings was taking so we could project how many hours we had left and actually if we needed more or less computer equipment to make sure we met our deadlines. So Unix was a staple throughout Big Idea all the way through. Actually, it probably still is in the whole animation industry, actually.
And let me see if I got this right. Unix, linear or nonlinear?
That's a good question. I don't remember which one we used. I actually don't even remember which one we were using.
No, that's fine. What can you say about MS Word PostgreSQL?
Postgres I use for like some contract jobs and stuff. Postgres is actually one of those databases that's been around a very long time. Most people have never even heard about it, but it was actually a pretty stable, quick database because it didn't have a lot of fluff built around to it. So it was straight up database, SQL, everything you did manually with it and working with it. So it was actually a really good, solid database. I didn't get to use it as much as I probably could have, but because I actually ended up using Informix probably more as the database of choice going through that. And I really loved Informix, how it worked and how fast it was and how much data it could handle. And it was so much easier to manage and set up and be able to deal with. And it really gave us the speed we needed at Big Idea and other locations as well, too. It was just a great running database. And back then, again, Word didn't have a lot of functionality. It did have the ability of being able to break things up in chapters, though. So I did all of my technical documentation in Word and split everything up in chapters. So it would be easier you could print a chapter at a time, or if you were changing something, you only had to do a chapter at a time. Word has been functional for a long time. It replaced WordPerfect. I started on my Kpro on WordStar, which I ended up switching to WordPerfect. And WordPerfect, I'm not sure many people use WordPerfect anymore or even know what WordPerfect is, but it is actually still used in the publishing industry and the legal professions a lot, because it actually would give you the ability to format and control the formatting a lot better than Microsoft Word still does to this day. WordPerfect was still better at allowing you to format and custom format things that you still probably cannot do really well, or at least consistently, in Word.
Software engineer and systems administrator.
Yep, I've done basically everything you could do on the computer. So system administration, managing that, creating users, making sure the systems ran all the time, and then designing the software. So I basically can design software either for server side, web front ends, and databases. I basically run the gamut on all those tools now. My knowledge and expertise gives me the ability to do a lot of stuff other people don't know how to do, because if they've never done it or seen all these other industries, one of the things I have noticed from working in so many industries, it doesn't matter what industry I go into, I can pick up what they're doing, learn it, and actually find solutions and patterns that I have used before in other industries. So it gives me this cross-functional experience that a lot of people don't have, just because of the wide range of stuff I have been able to work on through my career.
At CTMS, you designed and implemented an automated remote data collection from 15 to 20 client locations, and designed and implemented reports with new and existing KPI measurements to allow data analysis at a just-in-time logistics ordering and delivery system. That sounds complicated.
It was. It was, but it turned out not to be quite so hard. But it did, is that automation helped me a lot. So back then, you weren't connected to the internet, really. Our systems were connected via dial-up. I would have to automate the process of having the modem dial the remote company, go into a certain directory, grab their orders, download them back to our system, and then upload those into our database, so the reports could be run the following morning after that was run. And again, when I first started there, we were at about 8 companies that we worked for, because somebody had to do it manually. So when I went in and automated that process, it allowed them to grow. They basically more than doubled their companies that they worked for. After that, the next step would have been automating the actual load building, but that's really kind of technical too when you're dealing with that, where you put the pallets, how many pallets you can put in a truck, the size of the truck, the size of the product, and stuff like that. So it becomes saying, no matter, even if I could automate that to a certain extent, a manual person still needed to look at it just to kind of go through the intricacies that a computer at that time could not do. Honestly, now with the AI stuff, it probably could do all of it without a person having to deal with it back then, but you were limited by the computer technology, so you still had manpower that had to do certain tasks.
You helped improve the reporting system by reducing approximately 50%, half of the manual processing, just like how you did with that internship that you had. That is crazy.
Yep. Other instances, I even did that even more in other places. It's basically where you're removing the manual processes and automating them. And that just extremely sped up everything, which helped the company grow. They were not going to be able to grow without me being able to do that.
And speaking of tools, you have Irwin, Expect, and Visio. What can you say about those?
Those are great tools. I still use Visio to this day, because it's great for drawing out diagrams, data flows, what process flows are going to be. And I still use that for mapping out processes and data diagrams now. It allows other people to see exactly how the work needs to be done. So I can take that diagram, give it to another programmer or another database administrator, and they know exactly what they need to have done. Irwin was actually a database modeling tool that I've used in multiple jobs. I'm not using it currently, but it's a great tool for easily building your database models, so you can see what all the relationships are and how all the tables and stuff are related. And I used that a lot at Big Idea when I was there. Probably the biggest database databases I designed were actually at Big Idea, just because of the amount of just the processing of animation, how each of the steps are, and then just the amount of pure data that has to come through and how you want to work to speed up the processing and stuff like that. Irwin's a great tool. It gives you the visual that you can just look at easily and know exactly where everything is.
From March 96 to June 96, IRI Logistics.
Yep, that's basically another logistical company. I went over there and just did some contract for them to help them build out a system that they wanted to build, because I'd already done it at CTMS, so they needed some help. So I went in and helped them out to build their system, along with a group of programmers from India. We kind of coordinated. That was kind of an interesting. Got to work with a lot of programmers from India, but also actually sitting in meetings with people from India. So I got to learn a whole new culture, and it was a really kind of a fun work experience to be able to do that. I like broadening horizons, and that was a fun one.
SQL and Stored Procedure Scripting.
Yep. A lot of times, just do your stuff in SQL instead of analyzing data. Well, you didn't have some of the tools you can analyze data in now. It all had to be done inside the database, inside SQL, and create stored procedures so that could just run. I could automate those processes to run anytime they needed to get run, or when data's added to make sure ensure data quality, everything like that. Just a standard pure database thing. And you had to do it a lot of that, write all that yourself back then, that you probably don't have to do quite as much of anymore.
Another contract job that you did, Check Free Corporation, July 96 to June 97.
Yep, that was another one where I used my automation skills to automate their data collection from their different mortgage companies and standardize it and drop it into their system. Was basically what I was doing. That was my job, was to automate that and help them speed up their processes, so the report readers that could do their reports and stuff a whole lot quicker and faster because the data was ready.
Perl Coding and Stored Procedure Scripting.
Yeah, same thing. I guess just getting back into that. Perl language is one of my favorite languages to use. It's a little bit better than shell scripting, gives you a little bit more functionality, but you can still use everything you would use in shell scripting with regular expressions. It is actually a great tool for standardizing data and then combining the data before you go to load it into a database system. And you could actually use Perl to help you actually automate the loading of the data into the system. If Perl is still one of my favorite languages to this day. If I had to write something right now, it would probably be in Perl. If I had the tools for that, I would do it in Perl.
An IT architect at Interpulse.
It was actually really a consulting gig where Interpulse was a technology consulting company. So we would put teams together, go to different companies in the area and help them with their IT program, update their programs. This is where I helped work on a banking system there, built the fantasy sports website that I mentioned a little bit earlier. That actually was a top 5 award winner that year for that. Also helped build an email system with them that they were going to try to be able to white label email systems, kind of more like, I think it's Thunderbird now. Kind of was a precursor to what Thunderbird became, where you could bring in any email system into it and put all your email in one place. That was kind of the design and stuff for that. Also worked with a company, one contract I worked there. Actually, I did 2 contracts for them. One was building a system that actually gave a web front end to their sales team so they could get to their data access much better, because all their data was on a mainframe. But then at the time, everybody was starting to use laptops and PCs, and they needed quicker access to the data, and you couldn't do that with a mainframe. So I built the web front end for that, and then actually got put on the project where we actually built the server-side collection where we actually use shared memory. This was another one of my C projects that was really fun. Dug into that. So it was basically a 3-person team. 1 person wrote the side on the mainframe. 1 wrote the application and messaging processing. My piece on the front end, to the front end side, actually tied it back to that website I'd already built. And I would take the request for the data, send it into shared memory. The reader then would send it over to the server. The server would read it and do that. And we were able to, I think it was over 10,000 requests per second or something, whatever it was. It ended up, the savings that year won that group that we did this contract for. They won the best ROI for the entire company. It was a telecom company. So it was a major telecom company. And it saved them a minimum of about $5 million per year just because we built in that process, and it didn't cost them very much at all to actually get that accomplished.
A recurring theme that I'm seeing in all of the places that you work so far is that you are very much a work reducer. You take things that are manual or stuff that is really complicated and intricate to do, and you make it digital just to make it easier for everyone's convenience.
Yes. Yes, that exactly. I've done that in virtually every job I've had.
You are very much the backbone of many companies and industries that you've been a part of. Thank you so much for your valuable efforts.
Thank you. I always liked being behind the scenes for a very long time. I just wanted to go get my work done and get stuff done. That was my goal. That's what I wanted to do.
And you very much have done that and are still doing that to this very day. So thank you very much for your works. But even more impressive, while working at Interpulse, are all of the skills that you utilized. I mean, you have so many skills. It is absolutely crazy. How do you keep track of all of the coding languages and not just lose your mind in all of the lingo?
I forget them sometimes. It's really easy when you're working in it, but it doesn't. And right now, if I had to go back and do some C programming, it would take me a few days to get back up to speed on everything that's in there. Any language I do that when I'm in it, I can do whatever I need to do. But if I forget, I mean, if I'm not using it, the skill is gonna slack a little bit, but I can rapidly pick that back up whenever I need to. So yeah, I kind of forget those, kind of archive those languages when I'm not using them, and then go back and refresh myself when I need to go back and refresh my memory on them.
Before we jump into Big Idea, I don't know if this is breaking chronology for you personally, but what can you tell us about your wife?
Okay. Well, she grew up in Iowa. I grew up in Virginia, and she was never planning on leaving Iowa, but the company I worked for merged their offices into Waterloo, Iowa, and a friend of hers trapped her in the church bench that I was visiting to make sure we got introduced. And then the funny part is, as we started dating and stuff, one of her friends had to make me get out my driver's license and show them my age because they thought I was a whole lot, but I think I was about 9 or 10 years older than I actually was. Turns out my wife is actually about 11 months older than I am. So I always have fun joking with her about that. But I get some of the funny stories with her. Well, she used to be a florist. Now she does graphic design and stuff. She's basically turned into her artwork. She actually is an artist. She's doing a lot of painting now, a lot of drawing, a lot of photography, things like that. She's kind of gone really creative on the creative side. And I just help her with building the websites and helping her with the website stuff at this point. But one of the crazy stories, well, two crazy stories with her. So we met in June, started dating in August, got engaged in October, got married in December of the same year. And now this year we'll have been married 30 years. But the night before we got engaged, we had gone to the church's volleyball. They were having a little volleyball thing. So we went in to play volleyball, but she had to go to a work meeting. She left to go to the work meeting, ended up totaling my car. And the funny part about that was the ring was in the car because I was proposing her to her the next morning with a sign on the local drive-in theater billboard. So we had to go to the billboard and I had to propose to her without the ring. Then we had to go to the junkyard and get the ring out of the totaled car. So kind of a fun story.
That is the most unconventional thing I have heard, and I absolutely love it.
It's a great story to tell everybody at this point. So how'd you get proposed? Well, we went to the junkyard and got the ring out of a wrecked car.
Well, thanks for sharing that to me and the podcast audience. But now, without further ado, Big Idea Productions. How did you get into Big Idea?
Two of my nieces went to summer camp and they were, I think, 13 and 15 at the time. Came back home singing Where is My Hairbrush to my daughters, who were, let's see, at the time, one of them would have been about a year and a half and the other one about 4.5. Started singing the songs, the VeggieTales songs, to my daughters. So we started looking at VeggieTales, buying the VeggieTale movies, and I started looking at their website and I'm like, hey, there's a job I could do here. So my wife didn't actually want to move to the Chicago area at first because she'd driven through Chicago being from Iowa and she didn't like the city because, well, she only drove through the south side of the city. So she never saw all of Chicago. So that's basically how I got started. I sent my resume in, came up here for an interview. We loved it. She loved the area once she realized we were not actually in Chicago, but in one of the suburbs they were out in Lombard at the time. They had moved out to the mall out there. And so she loved it. We got hired, moved there to work for VeggieTales because my kids loved it and the songs and stuff were great. And that was probably the most fun job I have ever had, was being able to work at VeggieTales.
After doing so many interviews with some of your former colleagues, I just love that you seemingly are all united in the thought that VeggieTales and Big Idea Productions was just a special place on Earth that can never be replicated. It's truly
Yep.
a bittersweet feeling.
Oh, it really is. I mean, every team had their own Nerf weapons. So we would have Nerf wars every once in a while between the different teams. We'd all go play whirly ball together. We'd all do stuff together. It was just so much fun. Everybody was friends there. It was just a really great, relaxed, fun company to work for. One other tidbit that you may not know, I don't know if you ever watched 321 Penguins a lot, but the original 321 Penguins with the Video Planet Tell-A-Lie, at the beginning of those, they used to do like a little short video. My family is the video playing the card game, talking about how many cards you'd have to drop to actually cover up one lie, how many more other lies you would have to tell to cover it up. I don't know if I even have a copy of that video or anything anymore, but it's on the original VHS. I know it's not on the DVDs and stuff now. That was kind of removed with everything they've gone through, but that was kind of a little fun thing that my family was able to do back then.
Wow. I mean, that sounded like that would have been like a family fun activity of some sort.
Oh, it was really fun. My daughter's still one of my oldest daughter, actually, she tries to find it every year and send it around to everybody. And the last version we had got taken off of YouTube. So I don't know. I don't have it anymore. I don't have all those VHSs anymore. So I'm not sure where to even find a copy of that anymore.
Well, the one thing you can rely on is the VeggieTales fandom is really good at archiving things. So perhaps if I'm able to locate a copy, I can send it your way at some point.
Cool. That would be fun to actually have a copy of that again.
But Big Idea Productions, the more that I talk to these people, I kind of segment it into two things: before the sunny days of Big Idea, and then the dark storm ahead. What was the before period of the storm like at Big Idea?
Oh, it was just absolutely amazing there. It was like you were going to work with friends and family. Everybody got along. Everybody had fun. It was hilarious walking in some days. And Mike Naraki would start talking like Larry whenever visitors were coming in. He did that with my daughters the first time they came in and other times too. But it's just so funny to see a 6'6" cucumber talking. So it was just an amazing place. Just the environment was great, and then being in a mall was kind of really interesting and really just kind of fun. Now, how do you have a studio inside a mall? So
Besides cool Nerf fights with the other departments, is there any other amazingly, hilariously bizarre, but wholesome stories?
I mean, our teams would go play whirly ball together at times against each other. I do remember one time it was funny. One of our techies, after he got hired, came in and his wife came in to visit. So I was going to have fun and shoot one of my little Nerf rockets at him. Somehow the Nerf rocket went sideways and hit his wife. She had no idea who we were, but we still laugh about that to this day, talking to them. One of the other things we actually used to do, we used to have a quote tracker. So when somebody said something really funny or really hilarious, we would put that in our quote tracker. And then every once in a while, we'd have a company meeting or team meetings. We'd break out some of those quotes and try to ask who actually said that quote and stuff, which was a lot of fun at the time, trying to figure out, okay, who actually said that quote?
Speaking of quotes, are you familiar with Lango Lingo?
Actually, I'm not.
Keith Lango, one of the animators at Big Idea.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Keith. I forgot. If Keith, I would have known. Yes, yeah. Keith was fun. He was really fun. Him and was it Brian?
Brian Ballinger.
Yeah, Ballinger worked together a lot, and that was really fun. Seeing those two guys work together and some of the creative stuff they come up with. Brian is still coming up with wacky, crazy characters and stuff now. It was fun.
I can never forget that with those two, you have Thailand. Did you ever have the pleasure of visiting Thailand?
No, I did not.
That is very unfortunate. But speaking of people at Big Idea, can you give a couple of shout outs to some of your most beloved coworkers?
Oh, I think one that I really would love to shout out is Darren Reichert and his wife. They actually used to babysit our kids before they were actually married. Now they're married and they're in Florida, I think just outside of Tampa, and they're both teachers down there and stuff. But that was fun. They used to babysit our daughters, and Darren would like to make jokes all the time about what's a 3-letter word for dog food, and would go CAT because we had cats. So he was having fun with my daughters and stuff while they were while they were babysitting was fun. And I haven't seen a bunch of people lately because I moved to Colorado about a year ago out of Illinois. But I used to run into Jennifer Combs McFadden, who also met her husband there, Joe McFadden. They met at Big Idea and ended up getting married. And they still live in Illinois, and Joe still does animation, and she works with him and helps him as well. And oh, I forgot. Kenya is Darren's wife's name. I forgot to mention her name earlier. I actually had the chance 2 or 3 months ago. Mike Naraki, I didn't realize, actually grew up here in the Denver area. And his father passed away last year. So him and his wife and kids were here doing a memorial service for his father. They didn't know I was out here. So I went to the memorial service and we hadn't seen each other in 20 years, which was really fun catching back up with them and actually seeing his kids because they were really like 1 and 3 or so when we were at Big Idea together. So that was actually kind of fun to catch up with Mike again.
Another person that I have to shout out is Carl Pradle.
Oh, Carl was great. I love working with Carl. I mean, I don't think of anybody Big Idea that I didn't like working with. I mean, everybody was great person. Yeah, Steve Holfish was another that was really good. Also the whole teams down in marketing, every group was really, really good. Some of the guys I worked with in our department was Tim Toll. I'm not sure exactly what he's doing now, but he basically did all of our render systems and stuff. And I know he's still working in that area. Buddy Lewis is working out. Yeah, I think he's in North Carolina doing animation. Brad Hebert's out in Oregon now doing stuff. Scott Nelson actually went in. He actually was one of the guys I managed as a database programmer. And I know he went into computer gaming there in Chicago area. I'm not sure if he's still there or not. But I mean, it's just everybody there was fun. I still actually have a couple of drawings that Tim Hodges did. He did a couple of caricatures for me when I was there and stuff because he used to do that for other employees every once in a while. I still have those to this day and stuff, but they was fun. It was really fun working with everybody there.
Yeah, some of those people that you brought up, such as Steve Holfish, Carl Pradle, and Tim Hodge, I actually had the pleasure of interviewing. So
cool.
Just know that shout outs to all of y'all. Hopefully you guys will listen to this when this comes out. But Carl Pradle, the reason why he's so special is because he actually messaged me talking about how you've reached out to him, basically, I guess, to make sure that we were legit, that we weren't some scammers.
Yes, absolutely. Because you never know. I mean, my background, I've done a lot of stuff and I've worked in politics and stuff too since leaving A Big Idea. So I'm always a lot more cautious before I do interviews to make sure I know who is doing the interview and kind of get more of an idea of what your intent is so I can be better prepared. And that just comes from my days of working in politics as well after Big Idea.
No, that makes sense. But I was just very honored to have him reach out to me after doing our interview a couple months ago.
That's cool.
Thanks, Carl. So now we're going to try to do 2 things with your days at Big Idea. One of the things that I want to do is kind of read off all of the duties that you did and then talk about each of the episodes that you were involved with at Big Idea.
Okay. Hopefully I can remember them.
I mean, you have some very sharp memories, so I have no doubt that you will most likely recall them. So, one of your duties was to maintain a current animation tracking database.
Yep. Actually, that was my job. My first job there when I was starting there was basically maintain that so everybody knew where at every stage where every frame was in the show, what process it was in, whether it was in animation, whether it was in lighting, whether it was in render, wherever it was. And I ended up, because of that experience, proactively designing a complete animation tracking system that not only did that, the animation part of it, but also the pre-production. So you could put the storyboards in it or order the storyboards. You could do all that digitally instead of doing that on hand if you wanted to. They still were going to draw by hand, but then they could scan them and put those directly into the website and be able to manage them in. And they built it so it would actually be able to function and grow. As they needed new processes, they could automatically just add them in and they'd automatically be in the database and working. And unfortunately, that was implemented right before the end, unfortunately. So it only got used probably for the beginning of a couple of shows that ended up getting outsourced to Canada after that. But that was actually fun. So I had a fun experience basically designing that whole program from scratch to help improve the tracking system there at Big Idea. Unfortunately, it didn't help us in the end. It was too late.
Design and implement a system to capture and analyze large quantities of render processing data.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, we basically at one point during the Jonah movie had like 1,000 render servers in there, and we had to try to calculate how much time we needed left to finish, whether we needed to buy more computers or rent more computers is really what we were doing at that point. That was a long process. I had my first stab at actually creating reports for that. The sequel in it took 8 hours to run. I was able to, within a couple of weeks, though, and reanalyze it, restructure how I did the query, add some extra indexes and stuff, and actually it got that process to run in about 2 hours. So every single morning when we came in, there was a new report giving us projections on how much time the rest of the film was going to take, how much of it was completed, and what else was going to be needed for us to basically meet our deadlines for Jonah, to finish Jonah in time.
Sort of piggybacking off of that, analyzing render data to predict future render hardware capacity to meet those production deadlines.
Right. It's like I said, we're basically collecting that data from the 1,000 machines or so, and then running that SQL report to give us the projections overnight. So the next morning we knew what we needed to do, and we could watch the timings to make sure we were going to make the end and be done on time. And it was close there for a little while. It was like, for a little while, we were thinking we had to go rent another 500 machines, and then everything started speeding up. So as you get further into the process, it takes less and less render time to convert from 3D to down to 2D. If people don't know what rendering is, that's what it is, 3D down to 2D, so we can actually go on film for people to watch.
I heard this from somebody, and I can't remember who, but I heard that Big Idea had some production coordination problems. So what happened was that the writers would be finished with one thing, and then the animators would be finished, but they wouldn't have anything new to work on. Was that one of the things that helped smoothen that production hurdle?
Yes, it did. It was one of the things that kind of went into play for some of the things. There were some other things too, but when you're doing an animation studio, I know one of the things Phil wanted to do, and I understand exactly why he wanted to do it. He wanted to be different than other animation studios. Other animation studios basically work where they contract all the animators and the lighters and everything like that. They hire permanently their technical staff and their writing teams, so they could always build that flow out, and then they contract by show. Phil wanted to keep the consistent high quality animation that we were producing, so he didn't do that. He had all the animators and lighters and everybody on permanently, and because of that, there was a lot of downtime in the cycles of flow, and that ended up meaning we were burning through money that we weren't able to completely recoup when the videos and stuff went out, where it really needed to be a steady pipeline where each department was working on something all the time, and that kind of didn't happen properly. So that was one of the many things that attributed to its downfall.
Manage development staff.
Yeah, so Big Idea. I managed one programmer, like I said, Scott Nelson to start with, and then we brought on a second programmer. I actually brought in some contractors at one point to do another project that we didn't have time to do. So basically, it was just kind of managing and teaching other programmers how to kind of help them grow and stuff as well, which was a lot of fun. I didn't realize it at the time how much I actually would like mentoring younger programmers. I found that out later on. I didn't really realize I was just kind of doing my job and digging in and trying to get stuff done back then. Now I actually really love the prospect of being able to mentor younger programmers and being able to share my knowledge and help them through how to think about stuff that others may not think about, ways to think about things in a little bit more abstract way that allows you to see solutions that you may not otherwise see.
The assistance of analysis of new systems as needed.
Yep, always. I was always reviewing systems. We actually were reviewing a human resources system again right before everything went down. So I was always looking at systems, what we need. The system we ended up contracting out, it would be more expensive for us to buy a system than it was to have it programmed. I was always at that point of looking at new systems, figuring out what we needed, how we needed to go, really improving processes, but also trying to save money and help us through the process. And to do that, you really have to dig into other applications and look at them and see whether it should be built in-house or buy it off the shelf and then customize.
You had to help maintain an animation tracking base, which you already brought up. However,
Right.
You said that you also needed to implement a backup and recovery system. Was there any times where you definitely needed to back something up?
Yes. One time actually it ended up being my fault, but I ended up the backup system was already in place and everything. I mean, I had it down to where everything was in up to probably a minute or so. I've gotten better at that now. I can do it down to fractions of a second now. One time I went to create a replicated database so we could test stuff not on production, and ended up destroying part of the production database. So I had to restore it. So that was an all-nighter, getting it all back up and running and fixing things ready for everybody by morning when they got into work. So the backup and recovery came in handy because I kind of caused the problem on that one.
So now with all of that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the stuff you actually worked on at Big Idea. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but 3-2-1 Penguins Trouble on Planet Witch Return, I believe, was your first project. What can you say about that?
Yes, it was. Yeah, because Esther was the first video. Esther was basically done when I got there. So we got to go to the premiere of that. So I didn't actually work on Esther, but I started working on the program, on the shows right after that. And Esther, a funny story about that. My daughter, when we went to the premiere, she was mad at us on the way home, and we asked her what was up. And she was mad at us because she wanted us to change her name to Queen Esther Faith. That's one of those fun stories we used to remind her of all the time now. But yeah, 3-2 Points Penguins was fun. To work on. All the shows were fun to work on. I actually got to do a couple of the choir voices, the background voices and stuff in a couple of the videos and shows and stuff. Well, I actually tried out for, I forgot the name of the video, which video it was now. It's the one with the grandpa basically playing kind of the God character, but it was basically meant for a grandpa voice to talk to the kids and stuff on. I can't remember what the name of that video was, but I actually tried out for the voice for that, which was fun too.
If I'm not getting this wrong, it might have been a Snoodle's Tale?
Yes, that's it. That's the one.
Yes, that is my favorite episode, and this is new knowledge, so thank you for the new knowledge of my favorite episode. But from what I was told about some people, 3-2-1 Penguins Trouble on Planet Witch Return had a very troubling development period. When you hopped on board working on that episode, did you have any problems?
I had none on that one. I think the only show we ran into any problems with was when we were dealing with going to the full-length movie with Jonah. There was lots of issues going through that one and working through that one, but just because it was the pure size of it. One of the others that was really fun that I didn't cause the problem, but I was the reason they had to rewrite the script for the top 10 silly songs, because I had done a survey and we sent it out. So I was doing the analysis of it and basically trying to predict what the top 10 videos were going to be. The writers had already done that internally, what they thought it was going to be. And it turns out after like the first 2 weeks, I was giving them a prediction, was like, here's your top 3. And they were like, that's not what we thought. And then they had to go back and rewrite the script. And that's why you kind of have the script the way it was, where Larry was trying to throw in all of his silly songs and do that kind of stuff in there, was because the show was planned one way. And when the data came back, when I was giving them the statistics on what was going to be the top 3 and then on to the top 10, it was completely different than what they had originally predicted and written the show for.
Yeah, I remember seeing the behind the scenes for Ultimate Citizen Countdown, where they talked about the survey for the employees was completely different from what the fans wanted, so that caused quite the panic, especially with that episode having a much shorter development cycle.
Yep, it did, and I got to be the one to go tell them that the predictions were wrong and they needed to change.
And somehow, through that very short development cycle for that episode, there was no problem on your part.
No, it really wasn't. It was great.
What else can you tell about 3-2-1 Penguins, such as the cheating scales and the amazing carnival of complaining?
It was always fun. I actually one of the things I had actually suggested, I love the vacuum flying around everywhere in outer space. And I actually had suggested at one point, I think we were too far along in the process to switch it around, but I was actually hoping that when Jonah was in Nineveh and they squashed the vegetable, I was actually hoping they were going to do it where what I had suggested was, instead of squashing the vegetable, you slap it into outer space and have it actually hit the vacuum in outer space from 3-2-1 Penguins. I thought that would have been hilarious, but I think we were too far down the road in production to actually go back and kind of do that. I would have loved to seen kind of that crossover between the VeggieTales and the 3-2-1 Penguins. That's one thing I always wish they could have done.
So thank you for introducing that recurring joke, because every single time President Noam, the president, was sent into outer space, I laughed hysterically, even to this very day. So thank you very much for keeping that joke. However, you also mentioned about how you like to sing, which also you sung for Heyman's song on the choir and Larry's high silk hat. Do you have any memories singing?
Yeah, oh, I remember singing for it. I was just kind of the background singer, so but it was really kind of fun to be able to do that and sing and just be in the video for have your voice inside the video for that. That was just always really kind of fun. Instead of being in there just for the database architect, it could be an actual little role of actually doing something as part of the acting and stuff in there was just kind of a fun. It was just kind of one of those things. Once I got there, I was like, I want to do a voice or I want to do something. And so that gave me the opportunity to be able to do something that probably never would have been able to do anywhere else.
Now, you've already talked a lot about Jonah, a VeggieTales movie, but are there any other cool tidbits and facets that you ran into while working on Jonah?
We always got to see kind of the blooper reels because stuff would go wrong in the rigging or the lighting would kind of go haywire at times. And that was always kind of fun seeing what happened where when you're putting clothes on one of the vegetables, sometimes the clothes would just completely disappear. Which to us, that was just kind of funny when you're watching the scene and realize, hey, wait a minute, the clothes are gone and stuff like just little stuff like that. But just kind of how things went, little haywire at times and stuff. It was never major, but it was always just kind of fun to kind of be able to look at those blooper reels that I'm not sure. I think they did do one blooper reel for something, but I don't think they ever really wanted to do that externally a lot. But it was kind of fun to do that internally just to kind of see, oh, yeah, that went wrong and kind of see what happened with it.
Yeah, on the DVD, they had the digital dailies, which were pretty hilarious and very cursed at points. However, I recall that during Jonah's development, there was this one incredibly hectic period where the render farm kept swallowing up the frames. What can you tell us about that catastrophic
Oh, that
event?
was, yeah, it was insane. We actually brought in a couple of consultants to help out and stuff on that. And that's why we were worried about actually being able to finish on time. We cut it really, really close. And it was just like, okay, what's happening? Why is this happening? What's going on? And it was just kind of hard to figure out at times what exactly was happening because it was just like a mystery. It was just, you had no idea what was going on. We were working some long hours during that time just to kind of make sure everything was working properly and going to be finished in time. And again, we said we cut it really, really close.
The Star of Christmas.
Yeah, that one was a fun, with different story than kind of some of the others and stuff. That one was kind of fun to be able to do and work on. I don't remember actually a lot of my work on that one because we were getting toward the end at that point. So I don't remember lots of stuff about everything, but I don't remember anything really going crazy on that. But it was more of I think more of a somber time with everybody, just trying to kind of make sure everything got done and still have everything as high as quality as we possibly could get done on them.
And this is where I talk about the second half of the studio's days, the dark before the storm. How was that like?
Oh, not good. The night before the Jonah premiere was when I got the hint that we had a major problem. And I did not really enjoy the Jonah premiere. I tried to, but I didn't tell my wife or anything about it till after. So her and my kids would enjoy it because I just kind of that night, I'm like, okay, something's going down tomorrow and I don't know what. And also at the thing, you watch Phil and I could just tell Phil was not his normal self up there announcing and talking about the premiere and all that kind of stuff with the staff. I could see it, but I didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew it wasn't good at that time. And yeah, the next day was awful.
What preceded the next day, was that a round of layoffs?
Yes, that was the first round of layoffs and basically getting told what was happening and what they were dealing with and how they were going to try to solve it. But you could tell that probably it was just going to be a matter of months at that time. It wasn't going, Big Idea was not going to survive in its current form. And you could just tell what was coming. It was kind of pretty easy to see where all of that was headed.
What can you say about the Ballad of Little Joe?
Oh, that one was hilarious. I loved the way they did that one and the pea. Oh no, the asparagus. Junior asparagus. I keep forgetting. So I say some of these I've forgotten a lot, but Junior asparagus was just, they had the way they did him, and that was just hilarious. I loved watching that one. That was probably one of my favorite episodes. That one, and actually the silly song, the top 10 countdown, was actually kind of fun, the way it had to be changed and stuff. They were probably two of my favorite videos that I worked on when I was there.
And then I believe this was your final project, the Easter Carol.
Yep, it probably was. I don't even remember what the last one was at this point. So, yeah, and I helped. I mean, honestly, that was one of the things. I was one of the last people still working because I basically had found a new job when I knew what was coming. I had a new job and I was still contracting with Big Idea. So I kind of did all the backups, everything, preparing everything for the transfer to Nashville before they moved and stuff. So I got to work there all the way right through the end before they moved to Nashville at that point. So I'd go in when I would go by the office and stuff. I mean, it's an empty office. We consolidated everybody from the teams that was left into one office. And so it was kind of almost depressing a little bit every time you went in to see, okay, who's left, who's going to be here now, who's gone now, and stuff like that. So not the most fun time, but it's like, okay, the work's got to get done. We got to get ready to move this because hopefully Big Idea would survive in some form, and it has. I mean, it's not what it was back then, but it has survived and is still going. So
one thing that I have to ask you was, possibly, were you involved in a new movie called The Bob and Larry Movie?
Nope, I wasn't involved with that at all.
Truly unfortunate. But equally as unfortunate, what do you think are the biggest reasons that led to Big Idea's fall?
Well, I think the not having the pipeline in place was probably one of them. The model just didn't work how it was done there. And I think some mistakes with the dealing with the distribution and how that was handled in the lawsuit. I know that has been reversed since that time, but it was how that was handled would have probably been handled better, and they might have been able to survive without filing bankruptcy that first time and getting bought out by Classic Media. At least it would have survived probably at least another year or so, and maybe they could have restructured enough to completely survive in that original form. But I think between those two things, those two were probably that lawsuit, losing that lawsuit at that time for the distribution rights was probably the final straw. There was no way to overcome that amount of money at that point.
Sort of a double question, but my first half is, of course, Phil Vischer wrote the book talking about his personal fallings, and would you agree or disagree with his consensus as to why it fell?
Actually, I have not read the book. I do have it, but I started reading it and could not bring myself to keep reading it after working there for 3 years and stuff. I have not read the whole book, so really can't I can't really confirm what he wrote completely because I could not read it.
To kind of give you sort of the shortened version of it, he believed that Big Idea was hiring way too many people, way too fast. The unfortunate leadership that was supposed to help Big Idea soar was over projecting how much money they were making, which ultimately killed them really bad when they were falling down. And then, of course, the lawsuit as well, and overspending on a lot of projects.
Yes, the only thing I don't know about is if they weren't meeting projections for their videos. That part I don't know because I was never involved in the finance side, so I never knew that. But yeah, the pipelines, they were hiring people. They were basically, as I said, Phil tried to do a model that's not the norm for animation studios. He did it backwards for what that is, and that didn't work. And then the lawsuit, I think, was the final straw. So yeah, pretty much then I would pretty much agree with his consensus on most of that. I think it was just a great work environment and fun. I just wish it hadn't have ended the way it ended. But I mean, otherwise, it was just a fun place to work. Great people that I still connect with a whole lot of them right now and still talk to and stuff as well. So I think that's it. The friendships and the work relationships and stuff, dealing and help working through everybody and knowing you created a really good product is the reason I've never really gotten completely bitter about that. It was fun, and I still think of it like that.
I can very well say that you definitely contributed to a lot of classic VeggieTales episodes, such as the Star of Christmas, Battle of Little Joe, the Silly Song Countdown, and even on the 3-2-1 Penguins episodes. They were very, very enjoyable. So very much thank you for putting in your hard-working efforts, as always.
Oh, you're welcome. It was fun to do.
But moving on from Big Idea, I think this is where things start to get a little political. County of Lake, 5 years?
Yeah, well, not that it started after I was at Lake County. I just basically went in as a database administrator there. So I switched from an animation system to a property tax assessment system. So totally different animal. But I think what got me more political was actually my local school district was running a referendum. And I'm like, okay, I just moved up here. I don't know if this is what they need, but I know property taxes are high in that county. So I started doing research. And part of my research I built a website like I normally was, a techie. So I put up a website and posted everything I was discovering and finding, kind of what I do. But as part of that, I think what pushed me into the political realm was my website got hacked and shut down for a couple of days till I could get everything back up. I started receiving threats and ended up with a cyber stalker for 6 years who everywhere I went, he would try to come ridicule me and stuff like that. I finally figured out who it was, and he kind of went away after that. It turns out it was the husband of one of the elementary school teachers in our local elementary school. But I'm the kind of person, I guess, after working in the prison system and stuff like that, I don't take kindly to bullies. So the more they tried to bully me, the more I researched and the more I dug and the more problems I found out within our school system and stuff. And that's what kind of pushed me more into the political realm, because it's like, okay, I know too much now. I can't sit silently by and say nothing. So that kind of started to push down the political road, was actually what was happening in my school district and the bullying and the cyber stalker.
Wow, that is crazy. Wow.
Yes, that actually is what turned me from being shy into being outspoken and being able to speak in front of crowds and anything, was because I had to start getting up and share research in front of the school board meeting. And the first few times I literally would stand up there shaking while reading through my notes to them. And then after that, I'm just like, I don't care about this anymore. And I just would have fun getting up and talking to people and doing things and learning how to message to people. Started helping people run for school board. Through that, actually ran for state senate myself. I lost, but I was able to learn a lot through that process of different messaging, how to communicate, how to take more complex ideas and turn them into really easy sound bites for other people. Which turned into a lot of fun and led to kind of what I'm doing today, because I got kind of involved with that and researching the school systems.
And speaking of which, just reading some of your duties and achievements working at County Lake, I see a lot of recurring themes, recovery database in the system, and also you decreasing the workload by meeting current processes of future business growths and reducing execution times by 95%. Crazy.
Yep, it was fun. I mean, basically, it was just upgrading our internal system, making sure I got the right system, and then restructuring our database to be able to use to make the access times faster. And it worked. I mean, everything I planned just cranked up the speed on everything. So everything worked much faster, and it really helped all of the people there. I even wrote some custom reporting tools and things like that to help increase productivity, automated the installation and upgrade processes for people. So somebody didn't have to go out to, we had 18 different townships. So you had to install something on somebody's computer. You had to go actually do it. I was able to build it so I could do it all remotely and never have to travel. So it really increased work time and flow time for everything there as I was doing this. Like I said, it's like kind of one of those things I do throughout my career, has been, how do I improve the processing and how do I speed things up for the users so they're not bogged down and slow?
And from working at that position, you went on to the Sam Adams Alliance.
Yes, kind of got that more involved in politics. So I went to basically a think tank that was pushing different ideas and stuff that I believed in. And so I went to help with them, working on their database, working in their systems. Some of their websites still exist today, even though Sam Adams Alliance does not exist anymore. They have a wiki product that they had there, was Ballotpedia, Judgepedia, and Policypedia, where anybody could select Wikipedia, built on the same software. And now the Lucy Burns Institute actually controls those and handles those. And I think Ballotpedia is still alive. Judgepedia and Policypedia kind of got merged into Ballotpedia to make it one standalone wiki that continues to get updated to this day and stuff. And I had a part of that. But otherwise, I was just building websites and doing stuff. I built probably several hundred websites for Sam Adams Alliance, was there for different political initiatives and things like that, till basically they went under. That's another theme I think I've run into. I've been working in companies where at least 3 of them or 4 of them have gone under. So, so that was some of the reasons I had to move to different jobs, was partially because of that. So
I was talking to Howard Buddy Lewis, who also said the same thing, that he believes that he is cursed. Every company that he's been in eventually falls under or they get kicked out.
Yeah, Buddy's hilarious. So, but yeah, it's like saying, it is the problem just working with small companies. I mean, it's just a hazard when you're working with small companies or startups and stuff like that. The odds are they're not going to make it. but you go try it and work. And I've always been a person that kind of been very mission oriented in a lot of stuff that I've done in a lot of places I've worked. Big Idea was one of those. My current job at a scholarship is one of those. Sam Adams was one of those. Things like that. It's just been very, very mission oriented in a lot of my work.
Well, this next job you stayed at for 8 years, so I hope that it didn't go under. OODA Strategies.
Yes, that was actually, I started that one. That was actually my own company. It actually still exists today. My wife uses that for some of her graphic design work and things like that. So I was basically consulting with other companies as my own, building websites for them, going in and doing things for them, helping them run their businesses and improve their processes and everything as they went. Some of that was political, some of it was not political. But that was actually my own company. It actually does still exist. Just my wife uses that at this point for her consulting.
And then you worked at the Heartland Institute.
Yep.
And you jumped around different places there. So tell us all about that.
Yeah, well, basically, it was pretty much almost one. I went in as the project manager on their school choice. Basically, this all came again from my work from researching school districts and stuff. I became an advocate for school choice. And so Heartland needed somebody to run their Center for School Choice. So they hired me to come in and do that and kind of rebuild it because it hadn't been really done anything with in probably a couple of years before that. So I came in to rebuild it, change it around as we changed the name to the Center for Education Opportunities. That's why one of the new job titles, I became the director of that because of all of my work rebuilding it. We rebuilt collaborations with other think tanks, other groups. I would go testify to legislators. I would go give speeches, do different things like that around the country. So my work from school research ended up turning into a job where I had more of a national presence on school choice and working with school choice. And the other job I did there was because of my work in billet and leadership and stuff like that, our government relations director left. They needed somebody to run the team. And so I basically became the interim director of that team to help work through the point until they hire somebody else. I knew I did not want to be the permanent person for that job. I liked doing school choice and I wanted to stay along those lines. I just did it temporarily to get us through. And I think that's the job where I really found out I really liked managing other employees and mentoring other employees and helping other employees so they could learn how to deal with stuff and handle stuff. That's the job I really kind of fell into that where I'm like, oh, this is actually kind of fun.
And then very lastly, and the most recently, ACE scholarships.
Yep, I am there. Been there now 3 years. I started 2 weeks after the COVID shutdowns. So I was in Illinois, I could not even fly out to meet everybody and start the job. So I got onboarded remotely via Zoom. So learned how to use Zoom really well. Started there, and basically what I think the biggest reason they wanted to bring me in was actually I knew 2 people at ACE from prior to that, running into them at school choice events. But I had come out to Denver to actually testify to the state legislature here. And as part of that, I had done a presentation at the think tank here in Denver, and their policy director was at my presentation. So when he sent out emails asking, hey, do you guys know somebody that'd be interested in this job? I'm like, yeah, me. So that's how I ended up getting the job, is because he had been at one of my presentations and saw I could handle myself doing presentations, knew I could go talk to legislators if I need to, and I knew the data. And he knew that was one of our biggest problems, that ACE was digging into the data to kind of pull out showing the effectiveness of ACE. I mean, ACE had been around for 20 years at that point, but they still didn't have great analysis of what their impact was on students and families. So that's why he hired me, brought me on, and I worked remotely for about 2.5 years before moving out here to Denver. And I think that's one of the key things I've done there is, again, I've improved processes. I took their data that was, when I got there, was in like 8 different repositories, and I've been gradually consolidating them all into one. There's one data set that I still have not gotten completely integrated in yet. It takes a while, unfortunately, when you're doing all the other stuff, but I've created a system now that I don't have to do as much programming, but I can do the data analysis inside the tool and build dashboards so staff and everybody can come look for the numbers, get the numbers without having to spend time on the phone with me or at my desk talking to me about it. So it's created a really heavy self-service environment that has really decreased actually could decrease my workload. So now I can start focusing on that other data set and some of the other avenues and other research that we need to do to really start showing more and more of the impact of how a scholarship to a student that's in an underserved community or underserved school can actually change their lives and change the lives of their family and stuff. So again, doing another mission-oriented job and improving processes as I go.
On your website, you list a top 10 career achievements, but number one that I want you to elaborate on is you built a strategic plan roadmap to centralize all company data into the data lake.
Yep. One of the things I've done, that here at ACE, and I have taken the time to take all of our data, build a roadmap for it, so I can give that roadmap to management at any time and go, they can see where we're at on the roadmap and see what future stuff is. So if they have stuff that, oh, like, okay, this is future, we want to move this up. And that's one of the things I think, because of my experience in all these other jobs, it's given me the ability to think beyond what is needed right now, to think about what is needed in the future. And so that's kind of the creation of that roadmap, was I actually have research lined up that, if they want to do it all, gives us enough research to do for the next 10 years, built up already, of things I see and things I know about the movement, of things we should be researching and looking into that we really haven't, or and don't have. Some of it we don't have the time to do, or we don't want to put the resources into that right now. But I think it's something we will have to do in the future. So I think that's one of the nice things now about all of my experience, kind of culminating into being able to do the analysis and strategy and planning for the future while still dealing with everything that's in the present. I actually am considering getting back into doing some writing as well. And I just haven't started that yet, because I'm trying to figure out exactly what I want to write about and how I want to do it. Also, probably at ACE, they want me to eventually start a podcast there, going through the data and some of the messaging stuff for school choice. But I know I don't have the time to consistently do it right now. So I won't start it until I know I can consistently do it.
First question I have, we're going to go back to your teenage years. And you mentioned that you played in a marching band, correct?
Yes, in my high school, I'm in the marching band in my high school.
Do you remember the instrument you were playing in your marching band, and what song were you playing?
I played trumpet. And I don't remember all the songs we played, but one of the ones we had fun playing all the time was Another One Bites the Dust, was one we played in band all the time.
What a classic song to put on.
Yeah.
Keith Lango, when we were interviewing him, explained that like water was leaking into the data center and many were scrambling to get the computers out of there. Did you partake in that, or there's another experience that was something similar?
That was actually, so yeah, I don't even remember that happening. So I kind of missed that one, thankfully, because that would not have been fun. Water and computers don't mix.
Yeah. I mean, it explains a lot, because it's like you had a hard time with Jonah, a VeggieTales movie, so it wouldn't have been fun. So
Yeah.
you mentioned that you were trying out for the voice of the God character in Snoodle's Tale, and I was wondering if you remember the voice and what was it?
I do not remember what voice I did back then. I don't remember what I did. I just know it wasn't quite old enough for what Phil was looking for. I think I went more with, because I have more of a bass voice, I think went with more of a deeper voice to try to do that. And he was looking for kind of the older voice for that character. But as something else that's unique or fun about me during COVID, you can see the white beard and everything. My daughter wanted me to take pictures with my grandson, who was 4 months old, because she couldn't go to the mall to see Santa. So I bought a cheap Santa suit, took pictures with him. She put them on the internet. It went viral, and I ended up playing Santa for the kids that couldn't get into the malls that year through Zoom. So I became the Zoom Santa and talked to about 1,500 kids back in December of 2020 for the fun of it. And I got to the point where I was doing the ho 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 laugh so much that was my laugh probably into February the following year, before I kind of got back out of the habit of just automatically laughing like Santa.
Do you remember that Santa voice?
I used my natural voice, but then I started just going for the laugh. There actually is a video of me on ACE Scholarships YouTube channel, where I read the night before Christmas, and they sent it out to all the kids that we give scholarships to at ACE Scholarships. So I know that video is still out there, and still makes its round every once in a while. So if you want to see me playing Santa, it's there on the Ace Scholarships YouTube.
And my last question, it's more techie based, but you worked with PowerPoint, you said. And so
Yep.
how was the software like back then?
I use it a lot more now than I used back then. I used it more back then, was more rudimentary. I was not a graphics guy. So it was very data centric, very information centric rather than making it pretty and using their templates. I kind of just built out tables and just did simple stuff on it. I really didn't take advantage of the features. Now I do. I use it like crazy now for all the presentations and stuff when I'm doing those. Now I use it all it's so much better now, at least. And well, put it this way, I know how to use it a lot better now than I probably did back then.
All of it incredibly fascinating. So I have to thank you, Mr. Jarratt, for joining me on this lengthy interview, looking back at all of your amazing accomplishments and histories. Have a great rest of your evening, and take care.
All right, thank you guys. It was fun.
I'd like to thank Lennie for taking the time to share his amazing life story. And a huge shout out goes to Carl Prado for making this interview possible. You can check out Lennie's retelling of The Night Before Christmas through the link in the description. Special thanks goes to Reziel for all of his help as well. And until then, we'll see you on the next What's the Big Idea podcast.
Merry Christmas to all, and to all, a good night.